Imagine this. A young girl, barely more than a child, sits quietly in a cramped, hidden room. Outside her window, the world is falling apart. Yet inside her heart, a light refuses to go out. She picks up a small diary and begins to write, not just to record what's happening, but to hold on to who she is. Her words, written in secret, would one day reach millions of hearts and remind the world that even the smallest voice can outlast the darkest times. Stay with me, my friend, because this is the story of Anne Frank, the girl who refused to let fear silence her spirit. Anne was born on June 12, 1929, in Frankfurt, Germany, into a warm and loving family. She was the younger of two daughters. Her father, Otto, was a kind and thoughtful businessman, and her mother, Edith, worked hard to create a stable home for Anne and her older sister, Margot. In her earliest years, life felt full of possibility. Anne was bright, curious, full of energy, and quick with a smile. She loved asking questions, making friends, and dreaming about the future. But change was coming, quietly at first, then with frightening speed. In 1933, when Anne was just 4 years old, political shifts brought new leaders to power who spread fear and division. Jewish families like the Franks began to feel the pressure. Rights that once seemed secure started disappearing. Otto Frank, seeing the growing danger, made a brave choice. He moved his family to Amsterdam in the Netherlands, hoping they could build a safer, more peaceful life far from the unrest. For several years, that hope held strong. Otto started a new business. Anne and Margot settled into school. Anne especially thrived at a Montessori school where she could explore, learn, and express herself. She picked up the Dutch language quickly, made close friends, and showed everyone around her a lively, imaginative personality. She adored books, stories, and writing. Even as a young girl, she had a way of observing the world with honesty and heart. Life felt normal again, for a while. Then, in May 1940, everything shifted once more. German forces moved into the Netherlands. The country fell under occupation, and restrictions on Jewish families returned, growing tighter month by month. Curfews, special identification, bans from public places, and separation from regular schools became part of daily reality. The sense of safety the family had worked so hard to rebuild began to slip away. On her 13th birthday in June 1942, Anne received a simple but special gift, a red and white checkered diary. She was thrilled. Right away, she started filling its pages, pouring her thoughts into it as if talking to a trusted friend. She even gave that friend a name, Kitty. Through those entries, she shared not only what was happening around her, but also her dreams, her frustrations, her questions about life, and her hopes for the future. Writing became her private world of freedom. Just a few weeks later, the fragile piece shattered. Margot received a call-up notice that would have sent her to a labor camp. Otto knew they could wait no longer. The family had quietly prepared a hiding place, an empty space behind his office building, concealed behind a movable bookcase. They called it the Secret Annex. On the morning of July 6, 1942, they left their home carrying only what they could manage and stepped into an uncertain new reality. Soon, they were joined by the Van Pels family and later by a dentist named Fritz Pfeffer. 8 people now shared a few small rooms where every sound had to be carefully guarded. During business hours downstairs, they had to remain almost completely silent, no running water, no loud footsteps, no normal conversations. They lived by a careful rhythm, relying on a small group of brave friends who risked everything to bring them food and news from the outside world. Life in hiding tested every part of them. Days stretched long. Tension sometimes rose in the close quarters. Anne felt the weight of isolation, the ache of missing friends and freedom, and the normal struggles of growing up. She argued with her mother at times, looked up to her father as her steady anchor, and slowly formed a gentle connection with Peter, the teenage boy also living in the annex. Yet even in those difficult months, Anne kept turning to her diary. She wrote about fear, but also about laughter. She described boredom, but also moments of hope. She questioned the world, but never stopped believing in the goodness still possible in people. For over 2 years, this became their hidden reality, awaiting, hoping, enduring. Then, one evening in March 1944, a quiet moment sparked something powerful inside Anne. While listening secretly to a radio broadcast from London, she heard a Dutch government minister in exile encouraging people to save diaries, letters, and personal writings. These records, he said, would help future generations truly understand what life was like during the occupation. Those words lit a fire in Anne. She realized her diary could be more than a private journal. She went back through her earlier entries, rewriting them with fresh eyes, sharpening descriptions, organizing her thoughts, and shaping her experiences into something that felt like a real book. She even chose a title for the story she hoped one day to share with the world, The Secret Annex. At just 15 years old, she was already thinking like a writer with purpose. She dreamed of becoming an author, of her words reaching others and perhaps even making a difference. That decision marked a turning point. Writing became her way of holding on to light when everything else felt dark. She poured more of her heart onto those pages than ever before, her reflections on human nature, on courage, on the importance of kindness, and on her belief that people are truly good at heart. Even surrounded by uncertainty, and chose hope. Tragically, their time in hiding would soon come to an end. On August 4, 1944, authorities discovered the Secret Annex. In a matter of moments, the 8 people who had lived there in secret were arrested and taken away. Their long months of careful silence ended in heartbreak. They were first sent to a transit camp, then deported to Auschwitz. Families were separated. The journey was harsh and uncertain. Later, Anne and Margot were moved again to Bergen-Belsen. Conditions there were extremely difficult, food and medicine were scarce, and illness spread quickly. Both sisters fell ill with typhus during the harsh winter. Margot passed first, and Anne followed shortly after in early 1945. She was only 15 years old. Just weeks later, Allied forces liberated the camp. Freedom arrived, but for Anne and so many others, it came too late. Of the 8 who had hidden together, only Otto Frank survived. When he finally returned to Amsterdam, he learned the devastating news about his wife and daughters. Then, something beautiful and unexpected happened. One of the helpers who had supported the families in hiding, Miep Gies, had carefully saved Anne's diary. She held on to it, hoping Anne would return. When she realized that would not happen, she gave it to Otto. As he read through the pages, Otto discovered a depth of thoughts and dreams his daughter had never fully shared aloud. He saw her wish to become a writer and her belief that her words could matter. With love and determination, he worked to fulfill that dream. In 1947, the diary was published in Dutch. A few years later, the English version, The Diary of a Young Girl, reached readers across the globe. Today, that small diary has been translated into more than 70 languages. It has touched hearts in nearly every country. The Secret Annex itself was preserved and opened as the Anne Frank House Museum in 1960. People from all walks of life still visit those narrow rooms, walking where Anne once walked, feeling the weight of history, and carrying away a renewed sense of what matters most. Anne Frank did not survive to see the impact of her words. But her story endures, not because she lived through the war, but because she refused to let hatred define her. In the middle of fear and limitation, she kept her humanity alive. She held on to curiosity, laughter, dreams, and an unshakable belief in hope. Her writing turned personal pain into a universal message about compassion, dignity, and the power of the human spirit. My friend, Anne's journey shows that resilience isn't the absence of hardship, it's how we respond when it comes. It's choosing to write when you could stay silent, holding hope when giving up feels easier, and seeing goodness even in dark times. No matter how small you feel, your voice and daily courage can ripple across generations. So when life confines you, remember the girl in the Secret Annex, pick up your own diary, keep going, keep hoping, and trust that your story matters, because one honest heart can light the way for millions. Thank you for sharing her journey. Never let darkness silence who you are.